RMS Titanic remains one of the most famous ships in human history. More than 100 years after the disaster, people around the world still discuss its tragic story with deep emotion and curiosity. The Titanic was considered one of the greatest engineering achievements of its time. Yet its first voyage ended in catastrophe after it hit an iceberg in the cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean. The disaster shocked the world, captured worldwide attention, and eventually became a historical legend connected to ambition, tragedy, courage, and survival.
During the early 20th century, many countries competed to build larger, faster, and more luxurious ships. Ocean travel was extremely important because airplanes did not yet exist as common transportation. Wealthy passengers frequently travel across the Atlantic for business, tourism, or social reasons. Because of this growing demand, shipping companies invested heavily in modern passenger liners, designed to impress the public. The Titanic was built by the White Star Line Company and represented luxury, innovation, and technological progress. Engineers designed the ship with advanced safety systems and elegant interiors that amazed people during that period. Newspapers described it as one of the safest and most impressive ships ever created. Many believed the Titanic was nearly unsinkable because of its advanced design and strong construction.
When the Titanic finally set sail in April 1912, excitement surrounded the event. People gathered to watch the enormous ship leave the harbor as passengers prepared for the historic journey. The vessel carried wealthy passengers, immigrants searching for new opportunities, business travelers, and crew members working on board. For many passengers, traveling on the Titanic was a dream experience filled with luxury and excitement. Life aboard the Titanic reflected strong social differences between passenger classes. Wealthy travelers who could afford to travel in first class enjoyed luxurious cabins, elegant dining rooms, expensive decorations, and high-quality services. Their daily life on the ship included formal dinners, music performances, and social gatherings. First-class passengers experienced comfort and luxury that few people during that time could imagine.
Meanwhile, second-class and third-class passengers lived under simpler conditions. Many third-class passengers were immigrants hoping to begin new lives in North America. Although their accommodations were less luxurious, many still viewed the Titanic as an extraordinary opportunity because the ship offered better conditions than many other passenger liners during that era. The Titanic's journey across the Atlantic seemed peaceful during the first days of travel. Passengers enjoyed social activities, conversations, meals, and entertainment while the massive ship moved steadily toward New York. Crew members worked continuously to maintain operations and ensure passenger comfort. Most people on board felt safe and relaxed because the Titanic appeared powerful and modern.
However, danger slowly approached as the ship entered colder northern waters. Ice warnings from nearby ships reportedly reached the Titanic during the journey. These warnings informed the crew about dangerous ice fields and large icebergs floating ahead. Despite these messages, the Titanic continued traveling at high speed while attempting to sail through dangerous waters during the cold night. Late on April 14, 1912, the disaster finally occurred. Crew members suddenly noticed a large iceberg directly ahead of the ship. Although attempts were made to avoid the collision, the Titanic hit an iceberg and suffered severe damage along its side. At first, many passengers did not fully understand the seriousness of the situation because the impact did not feel extremely violent.
Soon afterward, however, water began entering several compartments inside the ship. Engineers quickly realized the damage was far more serious than expected. The Titanic had been designed with watertight sections, but too many compartments were damaged at the same time. Gradually, it became clear that the ship would eventually sink into the ocean. As news spread throughout the ship, panic among passengers slowly increased. Some people initially refused to believe the Titanic could sink because it had been presented as nearly unsinkable. Others became frightened after seeing crew members prepare emergency procedures and launch lifeboats. Confusion and fear spread rapidly as passengers tried to understand the situation.
One major problem during the disaster involved the number of lifeboats available on board. The Titanic did not carry enough lifeboats for everyone because safety regulations during that period were outdated. As a result, many passengers would eventually struggle to survive without access to rescue boats. The limited number of lifeboats became one of the most criticized aspects of the disaster. Crew members worked desperately to send distress signals requesting emergency assistance from nearby ships. Radio operators continued sending messages into the night while passengers prepared for evacuation. Meanwhile, lifeboats began leaving the ship, often without being completely full, because confusion and fear affected decision-making during the evacuation process.
The freezing weather conditions made the situation even more terrifying. Passengers and crew members faced icy conditions as temperatures dropped dangerously low during the night. Many people wore only light clothing because they had not expected an emergency. The cold Atlantic waters created deadly conditions for anyone forced into the sea. As the situation became more desperate, emotional scenes unfolded across the ship. Families tried to stay together while crew members guided passengers toward lifeboats. Some people remained calm and brave despite the danger, while others experienced panic and emotional shock. Witnesses later described heartbreaking moments as passengers realized the ship would soon disappear beneath the ocean.
Several famous stories connected to courage and sacrifice emerged from the disaster. According to reports, some musicians continued playing music in order to calm frightened passengers while the ship slowly sank. Certain crew members reportedly helped others board lifeboats while remaining behind themselves. These actions later became symbols of bravery and dignity during tragedy. The Titanic eventually began to break apart as enormous pressure affected the ship's structure. Shortly afterward, the massive vessel disappeared beneath the dark Atlantic waters. Hundreds of people suddenly found themselves in freezing water, desperately trying to survive. Many passengers quickly freeze to death because the ocean temperature was extremely low.
People who jumped into freezing water faced almost impossible survival conditions. The cold caused physical shock within minutes, making movement and breathing increasingly difficult. Some survivors later described hearing cries for help echoing across the dark ocean after the Titanic disappeared beneath the surface. These emotional memories remained painful for survivors throughout their lives. Fortunately, a nearby ship called the Carpathia eventually arrived to rescue survivors. Crew members worked quickly to bring frightened and exhausted passengers aboard. Survivors experienced emotional shock, grief, and disbelief after witnessing the catastrophe. Many had lost family members, friends, or personal belongings during the disaster.
More than 1,500 people reportedly lose their lives during the sinking of the Titanic. The enormous loss of life shocked the world and immediately raised serious questions about passenger safety and maritime regulations. Newspapers across different countries reported details of the tragedy, and public interest grew rapidly as more information became available. The Titanic disaster quickly became one of the most discussed events of the 20th century. People everywhere were fascinated by the dramatic combination of luxury, technology, human error, courage, and tragedy. Over time, the sinking became far more than a simple maritime accident. It transformed into a powerful symbol connected to human ambition and vulnerability.
Years later, scientists and researchers continued searching for the Titanic beneath the Atlantic Ocean. After decades of investigation, teams finally managed to discover the wreck in 1985. The remains of the ship were found deep underwater, where they continue to remain underwater even today. Images of the wreck captured public imagination because they provided direct evidence of the historic tragedy. The discovery of the wreck renewed global interest in the Titanic story. Researchers studied the damaged ship in order to better understand what happened during the disaster. At the same time, photographs and documentaries introduced new generations to the emotional history connected to the sinking.
The Titanic also became a major cultural symbol through books, documentaries, and films. Perhaps the most famous example is the 1997 movie Titanic, directed by James Cameron. The film became a global phenomenon and introduced millions of viewers to the disaster. It combined historical events with fictional characters in order to tell a tragic love story set during the sinking of the ship. The movie achieved enormous international success and helped younger audiences become interested in Titanic history. Emotional scenes showing passengers struggle to survive, escape the sinking ship, and face impossible choices deeply affected audiences worldwide. The film also captured the beauty and luxury of the ship before the tragedy occurred.
Apart from entertainment, the Titanic disaster influenced international safety laws and maritime regulations. After the tragedy, governments introduced stricter rules regarding lifeboats, emergency communication, and passenger safety procedures. Ships traveling across dangerous waters became required to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Improved iceberg monitoring systems were also developed in response to the disaster. From another perspective, the Titanic story reflects larger human themes connected to pride, technology, and nature. During that period, many people believed technological progress could overcome almost any challenge. The sinking of the Titanic reminded society that even the most advanced inventions remain vulnerable to natural forces and human mistakes.
The emotional impact of the Titanic remains powerful because the disaster involved ordinary human hopes and dreams. Some passengers hoped to begin new lives in America, while others traveled for business or pleasure. Many boarded the Titanic with excitement and optimism, never imagining they would experience tragedy during the journey. Stories connected to survival also continue inspiring public interest. Survivors who managed to escape the sinking ship often described emotional fear, confusion, and relief after rescue arrived. Their testimonies helped historians better understand the human side of the disaster and preserved important historical memories for future generations.
Looking at the bigger picture, the Titanic disaster continues fascinating people because it combines history, emotion, mystery, and human drama in one unforgettable story. More than a century later, the ship still represents both the achievements and limitations of human civilization. Its story reminds people about courage, loss, ambition, and the fragile nature of life itself. In the final analysis, RMS Titanic became far more than a famous passenger ship. Its tragic sinking after it hit an iceberg transformed it into one of the most unforgettable disasters in modern history. The Titanic captured worldwide attention because it reflected powerful human emotions, social differences, technological ambition, and extraordinary acts of bravery during disaster. Even today, the story continues to leave a lasting legacy through books, films, research, and historical discussion. For many people around the world, the Titanic remains a powerful reminder of both human progress and human vulnerability in the face of nature.